The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
CJ, I know the trade deadline was last week, but it seems like the biggest non-trade, or at least the biggest story to come out of that deadline, surrounds a player on the Toronto Maple Leafs by the name of Matthew Knies. These rumors that have been surfacing since the deadline about him possibly being moved, that intrigues me very deeply, particularly because it might have meant seeing him in a rival uniform, particularly the Montreal Canadiens. Remember last week, Kent Hughes was saying he was working on a big deal and everyone was wondering what that was. Could it have been that? Can we make some sense about the Matthew Knies situation as best as we can?
We can. I don't believe, just to start right off the top, I think people are erring by connecting the two. The deal that went down to the wire, supposedly, that the Canadiens were working on before the deadline, and then the fact that they had interest in Matthew Knies. I think it's two separate things. Now, the Canadiens did call the Leafs about Knies. I don't believe they're the only team that did that. And his name was discussed in trade discussions ahead of, Friday. But, my impression is that nothing went too far on that front. And what's interesting to me about the whole Knies conversation is it kind of hints at a direction that I think the Leafs haven't taken publicly because, on one hand, you hear his name, you're like, why would they trade a 23-year-old forward, power forward, signed to a reasonable contract well into the future, obviously at this point, a core member of the team. Why would they do that? And I think the answer is quite simply, if they could get two good things for one good thing, they have to consider how they can, find other good players to what we'll call retool. And, the Leafs haven't come out publicly and said which way they're going. Right. And I don't expect that to happen until after the season. I don't think you're going to hear any official sort of direction from the team, from leadership. But I do feel like the fact that Knies was discussed does tell us, they weren't looking to move William Nylander. They weren't looking to move Auston Matthews at this deadline. They're looking for ways to somehow put more good players around those guys. And ultimately that line of thinking doesn't usually work. Like, let's face it. The best player in a trade usually is the team that wins a trade. Just because you get lots of pieces, doesn't 1 + 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3 necessarily when it comes to trades in the NHL. I think usually, that's why the type of deal that the Minnesota Wild made, for example, for Quinn Hughes, even though they gave up lots of intriguing prospects and they gave up a first round pick, usually the team in the Wild end of that wins the trade. And we're going to have to let that one play out over a lot of years before we're formally saying 100% that Minnesota won the trade. But I think the Leafs were exploring ways to try to make whatever's going on right now. And it's not pretty. You can see that with your plain eyes pretty easily. Anyone who's looking in on the NHL at this moment. But, to me, it's a sign that they don't want to extend this out and do a full scale teardown. They're trying to find creative ways to get better next season.
With Matthew Knies, a player that inevitably, when the Leafs return back to being seen as a contender, that's a player you want in your lineup. I guess it would have to depend. I mean, the deadline's passed. There's no sense in trying to speculate on what a deal for Knies could just look like. I'm more just surprised that it even got to this point. Like, I just kind of, you have this extension for him. He's part of your core for the long term. That's what it seems like. And just for him to be kind of mentioned that way was just a big surprise for me, particularly the fact that people connected the dots between him and the Montreal Canadiens, who are on the upswing in your division. Like, I just had a hard time picturing that as a possibility for myself. But I'm glad that we were able to clear some of that up. I gotta say,
I don't think the fact that you potentially make a deal with it, like, I think that thinking should go out the window.
I don't look. Here's the thing.
Like, if you get the best return and you get a deal that makes sense, like, sure, you got to see him play in Montreal and it's going to come up on Hockey Night in Canada and you're going to be reminded of it a little more, but like,
I don't know, man.
You have to make that trade.
there's some players I don't believe in that thinking for. I think for certain guys, it's like, yeah, whatever. Like a middle of the lineup player, a bottom six guy, you're not hurt by that. To have like a top six guy, a top defenseman, a top player go in your division like that, like willingly, if I was a GM, I could never do that, because it's one thing if you lose that trade and the dude plays in Utah. It's a whole other thing if you have to see that mistake like every 2 weeks or however frequently you play that team, because they're in your same division and they're a rival. I can't see it.
I mean, the Leafs got Phil Kessel from Boston.
Yeah. Well,
separate deal. They traded Tuukka Rask to the Bruins.
I still wouldn't. It's not something I would do. I'm just saying what I wouldn't like.
And even honestly, if it's Matthew Knies, I don't know any returns. We're not going to throw names out there, but the Leafs would obviously be getting something appealing back. Like the Canadians, to make that trade ever make sense, would have to trade something they probably don't really want to trade either. Like that's where you get into the discomfort of a discussion. And so, the Canadians would be giving up a player or players, presumably, that could bite them in the ass too. That would be the only way that trade would make sense. Now, I think you got to take maybe I'm almost too logical, and I'm looking past the fact that the fans would feel a certain way and that it really would be in your face. Whereas if you're going to trade Matthew Knies and you traded him to Utah or pick an out of conference far away city where it's not, the reminders aren't as ever present about what you gave up. But I think you got to make the best deals you can make. We saw the Rangers and Islanders make a trade this year. The Islanders and the Devils, although you're right, those were Andre Plot, Carson Soucy. They weren't players that are likely to spend 10 years haunting, a team in the same metropolitan area as them. It's intriguing. You're right, but when you look at where the Canadians are, to me, they're loaded with prospects. They're arguably one more foundational type piece from, I'm not saying being a cup team, but really getting themselves in that conversation. They're obviously climbing there with the internal growth they've had with their existing players, plus the Noah Dobson deal they made last summer. I can see why the Canadians would be exploring that to see if anything would work. And I just think the Leafs, it's a sign of where the Leafs are that this is even a conversation. Really, this is a long way of reminding us the Leafs had 108 points last season, won the division, gave multiple media availabilities in the offseason talking about being a contender. And right now they're on pace for the worst in a 110-year franchise's history, worst fall off in terms of point total from one year to the next. The team record is 23 points. So to get to 24, that would mean they'd have to get to 84 points. Right now, they're not even on pace for 84 points. This is we're talking about something that hasn't happened in the entire history of the Maple Leafs franchise. And so what is the fallout of that? I mean, we're asking all kinds of questions about them, but part of the fallout of that is I think almost everything has to be on the table. And the fact that Matthew Knies' name was involved in discussions at this deadline, that's almost the everything else is on the table because, as you mentioned, he had, I think, 29 goals last year or 30-goal season anyway. Signed him to that big extension. We never would have started this year thinking he'd be in play. But I think even the biggest Leafs skeptic probably didn't see them falling as far as quickly as they have.
And especially not to the point where, as we've done on this podcast numerous times this year, wonder about the futures of Craig Berube and Brad Treliving, which that's not going to stop anytime soon as long as this team continues its free fall towards the bottom of the standings.
Yeah, and look, I don't expect any changes during this season here. I think this is just going to be a bit of a death march for the Leafs organization. The one wild card I would mention is what their final 7 home games look like and feel like. I know there is some concern just about, obviously, like, the Seahawks have won a game since the Leafs last won a game, right? I mean, Steve Dangle put that in our group chat. It's when you go on this kind of losing streak, it's hard to say what the fans will do. But the Leafs play. We're recording this Thursday morning. They play tonight against the Anaheim Ducks. That's one of 7 remaining home games. I mean, we'll just see what is like. I don't know. Fans seemed a little resigned to me. Like everyone just sort of is accepting of this. But if there's kind of pushback, maybe things change. But if not, I think the Leafs are going to it's the biggest week of the year now in Toronto is going to be the week after the Leaf season ends, the regular season. Normally that's all about the start of the playoffs, but I think we'll look to that week to get a sense of the futures of the GM, the head coach, what that, start to evaluate what that means for the captain and William Nylander and other core players on the team. I think that you're going to see messaging that week that's important. The most important people in the organization are going to have to get in front of microphones and explain what's happened and how they're going to fix it. And, and in the meantime, you're just in this weird spot where I think a lot of people that are fans of the team seem to be cheering for them to do their best to get into that top 5 pick spot. I actually think that's in their best interest as an organization as well. There's a debate to be had about that because obviously then it just kicks down the road the pain that's coming because they've traded 2 future first round picks and it's still in question based on the trade conditions when exactly those kick in. But, I think if you're trying to turn it around as quickly as possible, Julian, you've got to embrace the tank. And frankly, it's going to take more than a tank. I think it's going to take a tank plus getting lottery ball luck to win one of those first 2 picks. Cause I just don't know if they can fall far enough into the bottom, 3 or 4 spots to guarantee that they're going to get a top 5 pick. So, this is intriguing times. I've seen some ugly marches because I was around covering the team on a daily basis when they had that 18-wheeler off the cliff, which is a precipitous March fall. But it's been a long time between then and now, and this is a new low for the next generation of Leafs fans to endure.
Did you watch Steve Dangle's last LFR from the Canadiens Leafs game this week where he answered questions in French?
No. How was his French?
Not bad. Some of the pronunciations were a little tough, but he actually got through it. He got through it pretty well, actually.
Wow.
He did pretty well.
My comprehension of French is pretty strong, but I can't always find the words. So I think I'd have a hard time answering questions in French.
That's the toughest thing, right, with French, because I think more and more people, I see people understanding it. It's just once you forget a word, it's it feels like, oh man, I'm done. It's the end.
Yeah, it feels like you're falling through space and you have nothing to hold on to, kind of.
It's tough. So I could completely understand people who feel apprehensive about French, but do
you know what's the theme of this week that it just kind of occurred to me is fans have kind of been a theme of this week. I don't know if you saw the game in Winnipeg on Tuesday, but the Jets played the Ducks, and at one point I think the shots were 32-9, and the Jets fans sarcastically cheered shot number 10 and shot number 11 and shot number 12 to the point that players on the team came out afterwards. They were asked about it. They addressed how embarrassing it was. I thought Cole Perfetti had a nice answer just about, the understanding the fans' passion, no one's questioning it. I know you were at a game on Wednesday, a lot of Canadiens fans in the building in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Which I know is a thing. Look, the Senators deal with that, whether it's the Leafs as visitors or the Canadiens that's come up over time. They did a really nice job, I have to say, in the first round last year of getting tickets into Senators fans' hands for the 3 games they played at home against the Leafs in that first round series. But, the fans are a story there. And then, I'm not saying this fans will become a story in Toronto, but I think it's possible. I just get the feeling, there's the organization is curious, how everyone's going to respond just because it's been, I think 10 years or 11 years since they've had a losing streak this long. They've got tough games coming up. There's definitely a world I guess it's technically a winless streak the Leafs are on, but it could get to 9, 10, 11, 12. At this point, it's hard to see them winning. They're in free fall. They've traded some players away. I just think you get into this situation, it's tough. So the fans are going to be felt in a positive way when we get into the Stanley Cup playoffs in the next few weeks. And I know in Buffalo, we're seeing, the positive end of that. In San Jose, since the Olympics, they've had sellouts. I think Macklin Celebrini has taken everything to the next level for that fan base. But there's also some fan bases making themselves heard on the other side of the spectrum too.
Okay, 2 follow-ups here. One, are you like Pierre LeBrun where you believe in the winless streak or losing streak, or just when you account for overtime losses, that changes how you view a streak?
I'm nowhere near as militant as I would call Pierre. It's been drilled into him and he feels like he needs to school everyone. I'm I'm willing to allow someone to call it a losing streak, but it is technically a winless streak because you got points. You know, it's hard to compare eras, right? Like sports change, rules change. This is an example where literally Pierre and I, when we first watched NHL games, there were ties in them. It just was a different it was a different thing. Now, obviously, there's a lot more games going to overtime. Teams get loser points, blah, 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 blah. Don't need a history lesson, but I think that's where it comes from for Pierre. So I'm more accepting of it. But if I was writing it in a story, I would make sure I was calling it a winless streak because the Leafs do have a few loser points in this run.
Okay. The only other thing I was just going to say was being at that game on Wednesday night with the Sens and the Canadiens, where I know the Sens are trying to at least mitigate some of that overrun in the regular season with some initiatives they're doing with season ticket holders. But yeah, seeing the Canadiens fans in that building just was like, if I was a Sens fan, I'd be pissed off. Like, I get you got to sell your tickets and make your money as a season ticket holder, but like that's tough to go to games and then see like you're being dominated by opposing fans. I can understand the argument on the other side too, where some fans just don't want to have to deal with those types of fans too, but it's not a good look. Yeah,
but it's the free market at work. That's how I view it. Right. Like, you know, it's hard to get in. It's hard or more expensive to go to games in other cities like Montreal and Toronto. And plus some of it's just geography. Like I'm sure there's just Canadiens fans that live in the Ottawa area. It's easier for them to go to that game than to travel to Montreal on a Wednesday night. So, you know, I get why first of all, I get why the Senators players don't like it. I get why the owner doesn't like it. I get why they're trying to take initiatives, but I don't think we should be too hard on anybody. I mean, it's just,
no, you're right.
It just is what it is. I mean, I've gone to enough games. I'll say this, when I covered the Leafs and I used to go to every game, like I've been to a ton of games in Buffalo where it was like half Leaf fans. Well, I look at the Leafs play there on Saturday. I'm going to go out on a limb and predict that it will not be in the favor of the Leafs. Like some of it is just based on what's going on in the moment too. And, you know, it's hard. The Sens come back from that long road trip. Obviously every point is important. They scrapped and clawed in that game and came really close to tying it. I saw the last 10 minutes or so of the action, and they certainly had a chance in the last 90 seconds to tie it up and didn't manage to do so. So it's a tough loss. And then I feel like that the feeling gets compounded because there's Canadiens fans cheering in the stands, but I don't know. I'm not going to, Sens have a great fan base, so I'm not going to dog on anyone or anything.
They're,
you know
very
what I mean?
Passionate.
Like, exactly.
They're very out there. They're very passionate. This is not me dumping on Sens fans. I'm just saying, like, and I know they feel this way too. You don't like going to a game and then seeing like your fan base being represented 20% of the time at these games when a rival comes in. I think we can all agree on that. And
I think we can all agree it's expensive to go to sports events. And if you can make some money as a fan, like, you know, I'll tell you, I got a quarter season Jays, you know, ticket package right now. And I put some of the tickets up for sale. So, I mean, you know, and it's not to like, I'm not trying to turn this into a scalping business, but I'm just trying to offset my costs for all the other games I go to. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's why I'm more tolerant too.
I was going to say, you had mentioned earlier the biggest week coming up in Toronto, and you made a Leafs connection. I thought you were going to say it was for opening day for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Is it March 26th? I think like it's
March
really
27th.
soon.
March 27th against the Athletics.
Right. And then they play the Saturday afternoon, the 28th as well.
Correct. Oh yeah. Anyway, that's what I thought you had meant in terms of
the only debate going on in this house is that too soon to introduce my son to baseball? Can we get him to like the afternoon game on this? I wouldn't take him to a night game at the stage of his young stage of his life, but can I get him out for a couple innings on the Saturday afternoon?
Do you already have like little like mini headphones?
Yes, I have mini blue headphones or like to block out the noise. And then we've even got some Jays merch. So I don't know if he fits into any of that yet. He's growing like a weed, so I haven't tried it on lately. But anyway, he's definitely getting to a game sooner than later. But maybe even that first weekend of the season.
Okay, all right. I'll get us back to NHL topics. Actually, one thing I want to mention from that Sens Canadiens game. What did you think of Jacob Fowler's performance, particularly in those final minutes? That last almost 90 seconds where he makes this amazing pad save. That is I know he's played NHL games before, but like that is like you're here, you've arrived. And I get like there's time for him to, you know, before he firmly establishes himself as an everyday goalie in that market. But like that was a pretty big moment for him.
It is. And like, what's interesting about him is I think the question being asked in the background is like, is he going to play in the playoffs?
Yeah.
Because obviously the Canadians feel great about his long-term future. Like, I think they see him as the goalie of the future, but every time he plays at this level, especially, you're measuring, is the future now? Is he ready yet? They could have started Samuel Montembeault in that game and elected not to. If you're Jacob Fowler, you just got to stay in the moment and keep preparing yourself. And you're right, he stood up to the challenge really well. But my mind goes there. I mean, we were talking a week ago, do the Canadians, are they one of the teams that address the goaltending position at the deadline? They obviously let that come and go without doing so. And so, I just wonder, I feel like we're going to see him in the playoffs. I got to say, I'm not saying he's starting every game or anything like that, but if whether he's just in the background and you start Dobish in game one and maybe you lose game one and that's where you go in game two. It feels to me like the more, we're getting pretty close, right? 5 weeks from the start of the playoffs, 5.5. Mm-hmm. The more good appearances he stacks together here over that time, I don't know how many starts he's going to get, the more likely it is that you see him start in a playoff game for the Canadians this spring.
Wow, the Montreal Canadiens considering starting a rookie goaltender in the playoffs? That's never happened before in their history.
Well,
never.
I'm not predicting that it's going to end as well as it did for Ken Dryden in 1970, but why not? Who knows?
Or Patrick Roy. There's so many examples to choose from. Depending on what part of the country you're in right now in Canada, it may feel like fall spring. But I'm telling you, we are getting to a point where you can put away those heavy layers and start rocking clothes like this amazing breathable polo I've got on from Mack Weldon. And if you want to dress like me, I know that this is not a perfect outfit, the hat, the polo and all that. I would dress a little bit more professional usually. That being said, I would try to find a way to wear stuff like this from Mack Weldon and their Ace collection. And if you're not even into just like wearing polos like this, if you're trying to look for chinos, they've got these stretch twill chinos that go with everything and other button-ups that keep you looking sharp from morning coffee to dinner date. All you have to do is go to MackWeldon.com and you can get 20% off your first order of $125 with the code CJ. MackWeldon.com and get 20% off your first order of $125 or more with the promo code CJ. MackWeldon.com. Promo code CJ. Where else do I want to go with this? I would like to stick in the Atlantic Division because since we talked about the Leafs, since we talked about the Canadians, we kind of touched on the Sens. That's a tough loss for them against the Canadians and their playoff chances too. We could go in on that, but I also want to give yourself an opportunity to do a victory lap because the Buffalo Sabres are the best story in hockey right now. We were talking about on the last podcast with the game they played against the Tampa Bay Lightning, arguably the game of the year in the regular season. And we are talking about a squad right now that at one point we thought they weren't going to make the playoffs. And now they are 4 points up on the Tampa Bay Lightning in first in the Atlantic Division. This is your opportunity to say, I told you so, CJ.
I'm too classy for that. But what I will say.
Oh, I don't want to hear that.
What I will say.
I don't want to hear that.
Is
boo!
They were 11
Boo this man. I'm
They
too
were 11 and
classy for
14
that.
at one time in this season.
God.
11, 14 and X number of overtime losses. They got to 40 wins before they got to 20 regulation losses. Think about
amazing.
that. 11 and 14 and they got to 40. Anyway, crazy. I mean, and obviously I didn't predict how they'd do it. I just thought this was really that, if I'm being very serious, all I was predicting on, I kept looking at their roster and I was like, there's too many good players here for them to miss the playoffs again. Like that's all it was. It was not there was no deep thinking. I think a lot of people have, like that was always a perplexing thing about the Sabres. Like I remember we talked about them in the last couple seasons while doing this show. I always struggled to find the answer as to why they couldn't get over the next step. Like it feels like you don't want to get into curses and things like that. They didn't have a perfect team, but it just felt like they were always underperforming their true talent level. Well, that's gone out the window now. And we probably should be talking up Lindy Ruff a little bit more. Like I haven't seen a lot of discussion about his role in it. And usually, we got to assign reasons for why these things happen. Just wondered, will his coaching job, will he be the one who robs John Cooper of this Jack Adams? Everyone seemed to sort of I think rightfully say, how has John Cooper not won a Coach of the Year and felt like this was the year? And now with the Sabres roaring past the Lightning in the standings, maybe that won't be the case. I don't vote on that award. I'm not advocating for any candidate. I'm just saying maybe we'll see a swing at the end here. But yeah, I mean, it's a great story. It's so cool to see a fan base like that come alive again. Josh Doan's been such a good pickup for them. Seeing him just feels like he's in the middle of the action every game. Obviously, Alex Tuch, Alex Tuch, by the way, is going to be our marquee free agent, it appears, in 2026, because that board keeps losing available options with Nick Schmaltz signing in Utah on this week. But, Tuch's having a nice season. You see Rasmus Dahlin kind of becoming this, getting under opponent's skin pretty well.
Yeah.
I had someone mention to me who works for a team, he's sneaky dirty, Dahlin. I think he's unafraid to use his stick and get in on opponents, and people are noticing. But honestly, when people are noticing, when people are reacting to you, when people are getting up for a game in Buffalo, it's just a sign of how far this team has come from where they've been.
Remember Rasmus Dahlin and Brad Marchand earlier this year?
Yeah.
Like the ripping of the helmet off, like that was, I don't know if we could say sneaky with Rasmus Dahlin. I don't know. I don't know.
It's funny because I hadn't thought of this either, but to make this point, but the fact the Leafs are there on Saturday, I feel like that's going to be a real moment for Sabres fans to, have their yet another moment for them to have their moment is kind of what I'm getting at. Like a chance for them to puff out their chests and, because all the years that they haven't been in the playoffs, well, not all of them, but the last 9 of them anyway, the Leafs have been going to the playoffs, right? And they've been going down to games there and overrunning the building and taking 2 points from crappy Sabres teams. Well, the shoe's on the other foot now. Things have changed, and not predicting a result, but possible the Leafs arrive there with a 9 or 10 game losing streak. So I'm sure the fans will be ready on a Saturday, drinking their beers out of the Sabre swords and ready to give it to the Leafs.
Good on the Sabres, man. Like that fan base, that city deserves playoff hockey. They deserve to be cleared of all of the jokes, of all of the mockery. Like, I think it's a great story, and I can't wait until they make the playoffs and that first home game in Buffalo happens, and we watch the game, we see the fans stepping up and cheering.
Yeah, but it starts fresh then. Like this is the moment to enjoy, because you're going to be nervous come mid-April. And honestly, I don't even know who they're playing, but you could lose in round 1 after all this. So like that's the fun of the playoffs. Like I hate to, but it's the truth. I mean, that's kind of the roller coaster you ride. But right now the rides are good, right? Like you got free admission to the amusement park. Like you're getting to hit all the big rides, enjoy them. And then we'll see where we're at in mid-April.
Okay, one more thing before I get to stick taps. Yes, Nick Schmaltz signs that 8-year, $64 million deal with Utah. It's one less name on that big fancy free agent board coming this summer. It's really looking like the Darren Radish and Rasmus Anderson sweepstakes this summer, among a few other names, but and Alex Tuch too, of course. But like,
yeah, you're projecting that they're all going to get there. Like, I'm not sure.
You're right. You're right.
Vegas doesn't have a track record of walking players to free agency too often.
I've seen Rasmus Anderson's numbers, though. They have not been the most promising since he's been in Vegas. There is a chance he might still test.
Of course. I mean, and until you're signed, you're not signed. But I just feel like we're going to lose more names off the board between now and July 1st as it is. So
free agency's dead, right?
Well, it's on life support.
Jeez.
There's some good free agent classes coming beyond this one. So, I'm not going to say it's dead, but there's some unique circumstances. Like Nick Schmaltz got an 8-year deal from Utah, right? Players, because of changes to the CBA in the future, like there was more incentive for Kaprizov and guys like that to sign their contract because they could still get 8-year deals. That's coming off the table. It's going to go down to 7 with your own team, 6 with others moving forward. But this is the last window for eligible players to get those kind of contracts. So as an example, that's one market force, I think, that pushed players to sign. It was just more guaranteed money. The cap jumping up. I think teams have been willing to spend a little bit more, but nothing remains constant. We're only a couple years away from potentially having McDavid, Werenski, Matthews, all hit the market. Cale Makar needs a new contract. I guess the problem is when I even mention all those names, and even if one or more of those names changes teams, I assume they're going to change teams by a trade and an extension versus actually hitting the open market. So if that's actually the case, I'm now talking myself out of my life support comment, and I'm saying, yes, free agency is dead. But I do think it's going to look at the trade market has to be more awake this summer as a result of that. There's just too many teams out there that are going to be looking for ways to get better that aren't going to find the answers they want by going fishing for free agents. Now it's not even a question of like overpaying guys. Like you understand that you're going to do that on July 1st, and you're doing that because you want talent. But I think there's not enough talent out there to go around. And so I feel like we're going to have to get some trades kicked up, and probably starts with the names that we just booted around at the deadline, the Robert Thomases, the Trocheks, down the list. But then, there might also be new players put in play that aren't on our radar just yet, because basically teams have to get better somehow, right? Or they have to feel like they're getting better. They have to make moves that they believe are making them better. And I don't think there's enough difference makers available July 1st for teams to actually credibly think that.
I wonder how, because it seemed as if there was this massive asking price for Robert Thomas ahead of the deadline. I wonder how that asking price changes this summer, if that's still a name they want to move among some of the other ones that were listed ahead of the deadline for the Blues that are still on the roster.
Well, look, you're still looking at 3 pieces, probably 3 to 4, depending on the quality. I don't know that the prices will drop, but what happens in the summer is, teams are more willing to explore different ideas because you're starting fresh in the summertime, right? I think, what you're missing in the summer is the deadline. Like the deadline does force action, it forces decisions. But, in the summertime, I do think you can step back and be like, okay, we're going to have to pay this price because we just lost in this manner in the first round, or we missed the playoffs, and we really need this kind of piece, or we have these big decisions on our own roster in 2027, so we should get ahead of it by making a trade at this summer. So I do think that the summer will offer those opportunities, and obviously, it's nice if you're trading a first round pick. It's pretty nice if you're getting one and you get to immediately make that pick. Like I've always thought that's one of the reasons trades happen at the draft is like, you don't have to wait, right? Like there's kind of like, you're getting an actual player almost immediately because it's not just this hypothetical idea of a pick. So, I don't know that the price will come down necessarily, but you might just find more teams willing to pay it, after going through the rest of the season and getting to the summer and going like, oh yeah, we need a center and a right shot D, and there are not enough of those things to go around.
That is true too. I also shout out to the RFA market as well. Jason Robertson is an RFA this summer for what it's worth.
I know, but here's the thing. Offer sheets haven't worked really in general, but the odds of them working with the cap jumping again, I think it's almost impossible. Like you would have to put such a big overpay in front of a player to have the team not match it. And then you're giving up like 4 first round picks. So I just don't see offer sheets really factoring in. And I'm saying that knowing what happened with the Blues and Oilers 2 summers ago. I think that was specific circumstances where St. Louis rightly capitalized on, a situation that Edmonton was in. But I just don't see that being repeated.
Oh, well, I tried.
I mean, we want to drum up interest. And look, Darren Radish, what a great story. He's almost at 60 points. Right shot defenseman.
How does Tampa keep doing this, man? It feels like every year there's like a defenseman that they found who's turned himself into an everyday player that no one's heard of, or at least has been very low on people's radars. They have incredible pro scouting. Yeah,
well, and they have maybe the best GM in the league too, in Julian Breezeball.
That too.
Like he's very, I would say the reason that Darren Radish probably won't sign in Tampa is because they're not likely to be the team that now pays him an insane amount for that season. I'm not saying 100% it won't happen. Let's see how things play. There's still time. And look, the Lightning do have a history of convincing players to sign long-term deals and maybe taking a little less money and making things work. And so that's obviously on the table too as an outcome here. But, they're just incredibly patient and smart, and he's not afraid of a hard decision, right? Like he got Ryan McDonough to waive a no trade clause when he didn't want to, coming off a third straight appearance in the Cup final. I know they since reacquired him. They walked away from Steven Stamkos, a franchise legend, after exploring ways to try to keep him. I'm sure there's a point that they'll go to keep Radish, but if the market is just too big for him, if the opportunities are too enticing, they'll let him walk, and they'll work on finding the next guy. I mean, it's more teams should be copying what they do. Now I realize I'm saying that knowing that they have a core that it's hard to find. Like, they got Nikita Kucherov second round and Braden Point in the third round. And even Vasilevsky, late first rounder. And then they've kept those players their entire careers. And they've been the backbone along with Victor Hedman and Stamkos and some others that helped, fuel all those cup runs. So, it's easier to, I guess, fill around the margins when you have the main squares occupied by the right people. But yeah, I mean, tip of the cap to the Lightning. I've got immense respect for them. Just the way they've managed to stay in the fight. And look, they're feeling it. Like, what's interesting to me is subplot to this playoffs. Colorado's feeling it because they haven't won a series, or they've won one round, I think, since they won the cup, right? Yeah. Well, Tampa went to that cup and lost to the Avalanche. They haven't had a cup run since then. Like, they haven't had a long run since then. So, while it feels like they're always in the mix because they've been two really good teams, they both kind of had playoff success elude them in recent years here. And so I got to think the urgency levels are even higher. Do you see any of that Avalanche Oilers game, by the way, this week? That was another kind of game of the week.
I had seen the controversial Nathan MacKinnon ejection for goaltender interference, which those two things happening together at the same time is just like, what the hell's going on? I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the refs missed the call there. I mean, when you see the angles where McKinnon skates, like, are angled away from the crease, like, he's definitely, if there's no Darnell Nurse contact, he definitely was not going to hit the goalie. Like, yeah, you can tell when you see a play where a player saw an opportunity and decided to just crash into the goalie. I feel like that was a case where he was cutting across and then got knocked out at the hips. And unfortunately, look, it looked like a tough injury for Connor Ingram, had to come out of the game, was cut obviously under the mask, but that was a hell of a game. I got to tell you, it made me think, like, the Oilers, as bad as this season is, like, that they're going to be able to find it again. Like, that's between their game in Vegas and then the game in Denver. I don't know. It feels like, and we got to give, maybe it's the help of the guys they brought in. Connor Murphy played 21 minutes in that game. Jason Dickinson's filling a specific role. They're vowing to keep McDavid and Draisaitl on separate lines now. I think trying to utilize more of the team. But watching the Oilers like that, it looked like it would be a great series between those teams. Even though if you look at the standings, it's not even close, right? The Colorado's lapping Edmonton this year. We could probably pull up any stat. And basically the only area where the Oilers probably have an edge is expected goals. Like, they're the team that is expected to score the most in the league. And so their offensive game is obviously strong, but bigger questions on defense, bigger questions in net than Colorado has. But despite all that, remember, we start fresh in 5.5 weeks time. Like it doesn't matter where you finished. And anyway, I just, the idea crossed my mind the other night watching that game that Edmonton, like, we might have been sleeping on the Oilers just because it was so easy. It was hard to find reasons other than the top two players in their lineup. It was hard to find reasons to believe in them. But, Bouchard's having
also played a crappy division too.
Yeah. I mean, it's right. It's right there for them for the taking that way too. I mean, Vegas just keeps losing. Like, it's
no shade to Anaheim and the rest of the Pacific, but, like, you look at their point totals compared to the rest of the league, like, I don't know how many teams in the Pacific right now would be playoff teams in the East right now.
Anaheim might legitimately win that division in the regular season.
Yes, they might. Yes.
If you look at their strength of schedule, it's like below the other teams. Like, just hard to know because the core of their team is young. So I don't know how they're going to respond to, like, will they fall off? But I could see the Ducks winning the division, but I still think the Oilers find their way to the conference final. That's just what my gut's telling me.
Also, I said a Pacific team might not be able to make the playoffs right now. The Ducks, 75 points as we're recording. The Boston Bruins in that last wild card spot at 78 points.
Wow.
Right now. Like there's no playoff spot for a Pacific team if any of them were in the Eastern Conference. The Ducks have 2 more points than the Ottawa Senators, who are the second team out of a playoff spot in the East right now. We
can't do this though. Like that happened last year too, right?
I know. The Flames were very close as well. They had like 90 something points and
was it the Flames that would have been in the East, or was it the other way?
No, the Flames, I think, with what
they had more
last
points
year,
than a team that got in the East, right?
Yes. Yeah, I can.
But it's different schedules, right?
Like different schedules, different conferences. Like I get it. It's useless to do that.
It's not apples to apples. Is the point.
The Flames had 96 points last year. The Montreal Canadiens had 91 points last year. The Devils also had 91 points last year. There's a few teams they had more
but the
points
Flames got to play more Western Conference teams, and there was more crappy teams than in the East, right? Like that would be the anyway. I hate. We all know. Like, I don't need to go on for the record for the 102nd time, but I still think we should just do 1 to 8 in the conferences. But even if you did 1 to 8, there still could be a circumstance the team that's 9th in one of the conferences was better than the 8th team by points in the other one. I mean, you just got to live with that unless you're going to do a 1 to 16 or something with the whole league.
Yeah, and you can't like 1 to 16 with all the travel logistics just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and it's also maybe not fair for the team that finishes 1. Let's say that the best team in the league is Anaheim, but they got to play their first round in Boston and travel all the way across. And then the team that's 2 plays like a New York series and doesn't even get on a plane. That's not fair either in terms of wear and tear. I mean, it's a series of trade-offs, this playoffs, but the fact that we still have Colorado, Minnesota, and Dallas, and one of those teams is going to be out in round 1 is insane when you look at the seasons they've had. But I digress.
Anyway, we could do an entire episode on what we think the playoffs should look like, and that's probably a future episode idea. Do you have a stick tap, sir, before we get out of here?
Well, I was going to do Jacob Fowler. I didn't know we were going to get into that discussion, but
that's totally fine. You could still give it to him.
Who do you got? Let's see if I can come up with another one while you're answering. Dog ate my homework.
I think Jacob Fowler still, like, he deserves a stick tap. He had an incredible performance against the Sens. Like, he is deserving of a stick tap. You should still get.
There was recency bias, though. I mean, that was the last thing I watched last night. I woke up this morning when you turned on the pod, and so I mean, there's definitely I can't look around and say. I mean, I don't know if you noticed this. This was kind of a crazy stat, but Jonathan Quick had a shutout this week. Mm-hmm. Did you see that he passed Henrik Lundqvist on all-time shutout list?
I did not know that.
And obviously, Jonathan Quick had a great career, and he's had a long career. The fact he's still going at age 40, but. And won 2 cups way back in LA in the day, but I would not have guessed he would have been surpassing Henrik Lundqvist. So I'll go from a young goalie to an older goalie and stick tap Jonathan Quick on passing King Henrik on some pretty notable company he's keeping there.
Jonathan Quick's next shutout would have him in a tie for 16th all time in shutouts with Patrick Watt.
There you go.
Just so you know.
I never know what goalies get in the Hall of Fame, but I just wonder, will Quick get there? He's probably got a case based on longevity. He won a Conn Smythe. He won 2 cups. Anyway.
I think he has a case.
But I don't know really the Hall of Fame. The goalie thing is always confusing in the Hall of Fame. There's like none in, and then all of a sudden they put in like 3 guys. Like I never know what the standard is.
2 cups, playoff MVP, longevity. He was an all-star once, but I'm willing to hear arguments on Jonathan Quick. There was a point where you could, and I get like a lot of that success was rooted in the playoffs, but that's where it's supposed to matter.
Didn't he have I think he had like a .938 save percentage in one of those cup runs. Like it was like he was unbeatable. So anyway,
I don't know. I'm here for arguments if you have them for Jonathan Quick's Hall of Fame candidacy and for the stick tap you just gave him.
That was the weirdest stick tap, like the least graceful stick tap I've ever delivered, but
you tried your best. I was going to give mine to Bam Adebayo for scoring 83 points in a game this week. The second most we've seen in a game this year. It's in a game all time behind Wilt Chamberlain's record. And I know there are a lot of people who are upset because Bam Adebayo surpassed Kobe Bryant's 81. that he did against the Toronto Raptors.
It only took getting 102 free throws in the game for him to get there.
Okay, I get it. If we want to get into,
it feels like they gamed
throws,
the record. That's what it felt like. They gamed the record. That's what I didn't like about it.
I just think we're doing this is a lot of crying over nothing here. Bam Adebayo, I get the free throws happen, but like, can't we just appreciate a story for what it is? He scored 83 points in a damn game.
Yeah, like, and his mom was there, and it was cool. Like, I'm not denying that. I just wished he finished at like 79 points and like was a little behind Kobe. I don't
want to hear this. I don't want to hear that.
I should say this.
I don't want to hear that.
I'm not being logical here. I'm an old guy. Like, and I remember the Kobe game, and obviously since, unfortunately died way too young. And like, I just want that to live on a little longer as like the modern day record.
It's going to live on. Oh my God.
I don't know.
Oh my God. It's going to live on.
It becomes a little less mythical.
Is a mythical figure who is larger than life, and people will stop at nothing to commemorate him at any point throughout his career, his exploits. You could go on Twitter right now and find highlights of the last game he played where he scored 60 points and then walked off. Like people are just worried all of a sudden because of one game.
It's
Kobe Bryant's legacy is just going to disappear into the ethos. It's gone. We're never going to see people talk about the 81-point game ever again. It's just gone.
It takes some shine away from it.
True.
It takes shine away from it.
No, it doesn't.
It does.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Kobe Bryant is a Hall of Fame player who
yeah, but that's not the same argument. What he accomplished felt mythical, right? Like nobody could touch that. It still does. And then another guy touched it and passed it by 2. I don't like it.
Okay, but like in a vacuum alone, it will still be appreciated until the end of time how impressive Kobe Bryant was in that 81-point game. Kobe Bryant, we're not talking about Kobe Bryant having the most points in an NBA game. That belongs to Wilt Chamberlain.
But it was a modern day kind of record. Like Wilt played in a different era.
But the fact that Kobe Bryant got that respect anyway, even if it is not the all-time record, tells you that people, regardless of where that record stands, they're going to commemorate that and celebrate that. And the idea that Bam Adebayo getting 2 more points than Kobe Bryant is just going to take that away, I think is an absolutely ridiculous argument. Not necessarily going at you with this, but like a lot of people feel that way.
This is my retort to it, though.
It's Kobe Bryant.
Right, but Kobe Bryant it felt like he did something impossible. And then now all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's possible. If you take 102 free throws and your team keeps fouling the other team to slow the clock down and you challenge things and. Look, this is not logical. I'm just telling you right now, I was the biggest Tiger Woods fan you ever know since I was 14 years old, like when he was still in college. If someone starts attacking Tiger's records, they will A, be a hell of a golfer, but B, I will openly be cheering against it. I'm just letting you know ahead of time. Like, I hold on to certain things.
Who has the record for all-time most majors won in golf?
Jack Nicklaus, but there's a lot of stuff we could get into there.
But we remember Tiger Woods and celebrate him anyway.
But if Scotty Scheffler starts breaking his records, which seems possible, we'll see. I'm not going to be cheering for Scotty, and he seems like the nicest guy on earth. Like it's nothing against Scotty. It's just it doesn't. This is not rational. This is sports, pal.
We choose who. Kobe Bryant and Tiger Woods, you can kind of put them in the same category as like half men, half amazing for their athletic exploits, of course, strictly speaking to that. But it doesn't matter if they didn't have the all-time record for a certain thing. They were just so incredible in their respective sports that I think that feeling of whatever they did, making it feel like, oh, wow, it was impossible, but he did it. That is always going to stay with them forever. That aura is going to stay with them forever. No matter what records of them get broken, no matter who surpasses what, it doesn't matter. Tiger Woods, even if it gets to a point where Scotty Scheffler, damn it, look, Tiger's kids could come up and start playing golf and start surpassing some of his records. We're still going to look back at Tiger because there's no other golfer in the history of the sport that has made us feel the way that we feel about Tiger Woods. Kobe Bryant is one of the few NBA players who made people feel something irrational whenever they watched him play, compared to a Bam Adebayo, compared to a Scotty Scheffler, compared to any of the other contemporaries who could go up there and strike those records. It's just like, I don't think people are like,
I agree to
I'm
disagree.
not worried. I'm not
We're
worried.
definitely not swaying each other.
People like I'm not worried, man. Like
Scotty, you stay away from Tigers records. Scotty,
I just think we're being ridiculous.
Step
I just think
back.
we're being ridiculous.
Don't pull Bam Adebayo here. Scotty, you stay away.
Anyway, shout out Bam Adebayo, and 83 points is a really impressive mark, and good on him for getting that moment. And I think more people should just kind of take a step back and just appreciate the fact that someone was able to do that. I just wish people did that more.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I'm not hating on a guy. I just wish he had a few less points.
Well, do you wish he did 81? Do you wish he would have, hey, out of respect, just do 81
I'm not
points so that way
saying
he
that.
can stick on the same one.
I'm not saying he owed anything to anybody. Like, I'm just saying I wish he ended up with less, but I get why he pushed for more. Like, that's no problem there.
Anyway, get your questions in for Ask CJ on the next edition of the Chris Johnston show.
It's never the hockey arguments that break us. It's always some random shit.
Thank you so much for rocking with us today. Thank you so much for rocking with us this week. Thank you so much for rocking with us, period. We've done over 400 episodes of this show, and we're grateful for every 100%er who has tapped into this show. We really appreciate y'all, man. Yeah. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so
Scotty, take
already.
a weekend off, bud. Spend a little more family time.
The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Hey, did you like the thing you just watched?
Was it hilarious? Was it informative? Was it me losing my mind?
Possibly. Potentially. Most of the time it is. Hey, listen, if you like what SDPN has to offer, you should check out more of our videos and subscribe to our channel by clicking subscribe, or Steve will find you.